Alan Dershowitz joins us, but watch this.
I plan to fulfill my constitutional responsibilities to nominate a successor in due time. There will be plenty of time for me to do so and for the Senate to fulfill its responsibility to give that person a fair hearing and a timely vote. These are responsibilities that I take seriously, as should everyone. They're bigger than any one party. They are about our democracy. They're about the institution to which Justice Scalia dedicated his professional life and making sure it continues to function as the beacon of justice that our founders envisioned.
All right, and as promised, joining us now is Professor Alan Dershowitz, professor at Harvard Law School, Newsmax Contributor, author of Abraham, the World's First, but certainly not last, Jewish Lawyer. Hello, Alan.
Hey, how are you?
Great. Good to talk to you again. All right, before we get to that part of it, the political part of it, I know that you told me earlier that the Supreme Court will really never be the same with the passing of Justice Scalia.
No, I can tell you, as somebody who argues in front of the Supreme Court, that there's no more feisty justice, no justice who asked harder questions, no justice who enjoyed the encounter more than Justice Scalia. If you were well prepared, it was a pleasure. If you were unprepared, it was a nightmare. I fought with Justice Scalia both in court and out of court. He came to my class, debated me for 2 hours, saying that during this debate we're all equals. He's not a justice, I'm not a professor, just the best ideas prevail. He wrote me a long letter after Bush versus Gore saying that someday, before each of us becomes senile, he'll sit down with me and persuade me that he was right in casting his vote in that way. We never had the occasion to have that day because he never did get senile, and unfortunately he died too early a death. I'll miss him. He was a fascinating man. I knew his father back at Brooklyn College when he was a teacher there and I was a student, and I've known Nino basically since he was a law professor, many years, and I've known him in many incarnations. We traveled in Israel together, debating judicial review in front of audiences there. So it's been a long-term relationship. I saw him most recently at the Supreme Court, where we spoke to students about separation of church and state. He had ideas on every issue.
Yeah, well, he will be missed, certainly, and our condolences to you and everyone else who knew him and loved him. Let me ask you now about what you just heard President Obama say, and what, since we last spoke, Mitch McConnell has weighed in, and we know where we are. Do you believe that it's incumbent upon the Republicans to hear a nominee, debate a nominee, and have hearings and vote?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I do think so. And they have a right to turn him down, her down, but they do have to go through the process. The president, under the Constitution, gets to nominate justices with the advice and consent of the Senate. Now, the president has two ways of playing this. He can appoint a typical liberal Democrat, knowing that it will be rejected in order to make it into a campaign issue. And the Democrats would benefit from that if the issue were right to choice, gay marriage, which are pretty popular with voters. So that's one way he could go. I don't think the president will go that way. I think he will try to pick a moderate, somebody from an ethnic group that's never been on the Supreme Court, say an Asian American. He may actually try to find somebody who was put on a circuit court by President Bush, so that he can say, look, this is somebody who was a Republican nominee, who was confirmed earlier by a Republican Senate. How can you now turn him or her down? There are many ways the president can play this, but so far he's doing it exactly right, saying he has a constitutional obligation to nominate, and the Senate has a constitutional obligation to have a process of advice and consent, which isn't delay, which is what the Republicans are calling for.
Right. To that end, let me constitutional duty. Let me ask you about the possibility that's been thrown around of a recess appointment. If the Senate,
can't do it.
Go ahead.
Can't do it. Recess appointment won't fly because the Senate A has to be in recess, and B, it has to be a very short-term appointment. Justice Brennan was appointed initially as a recess appointment because the person he succeeded died during the summer, and the Senate was not in session. But he can't do that now. It has to be. Well,
Alan, with all due respect, you say he can't. In other words, he shouldn't, or I mean, if the Senate is in recess, which it is right now, and which it will be in January of next year, couldn't he then do it?
He could, but he wouldn't get away with it. I think the public wouldn't hear that. By the way, having said that, what the president should do, let me tell you, if the shoe were on the other foot, the Democrats would be doing exactly what the Republicans were doing.
Yep.
If we had a Republican president on the way out, all the same people who are now hypocritically saying, oh, it's the constitutional duty to do this, would be saying delay, 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 delay. So, hypocrisy is not in any way the monopoly of Republicans. The Democrats would be just as hypocritical. The same lobby groups that are pushing so hard to get this nomination through would be saying delay, 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 delay.
As Chuck Schumer did.
Justify the means.
As in 2007, Chuck Schumer, with 18 months left to go in Bush's term, said that we will not confirm any of Bush's nominees. So he said it right there.
There's, on both sides, they play politics.
Yep.
They shouldn't. My recollection, of course, I'm not old enough to remember this, but reading about this, when President Hoover asked for the list of the most qualified people to replace Olive Wendell Holmes, and they gave him a list, and the Democrat, Justice Cardozo, Benjamin Cardozo, was on the bottom of the list. He said to his attorney general, it's a great list, but you have it upside down. I'm going to appoint the person on the bottom of the list because he's the most qualified. And they said, but he's a Democrat. Doesn't matter.
Right.
The Supreme Court deserves to get the most qualified person. So if the president would have picked somebody who's extraordinarily well qualified, highly regarded by the legal profession, it'd be much harder to turn that person down.
Alan, thank you very much, sir.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.